want to thank you for checking out another podcast of We Ain't Scared Talk, where we ain't scared. My name is A1. In the last few podcasts, they've received some good feedback, a lot of good momentum, and I appreciate that. The show is available on YouTube, so if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Subscribe. These shows come out every Saturday, and it is a show for black men, by black men, even though I know that other non-black people, will be listening, but just understand it's from a black male perspective. So today's show, there may be some language. I just want to be upfront. Because I know sometimes you may be riding in your cars and there may be kids, or you might be listening to it in a mixed crowd of people. And I don't use language just for the sake of using it. I mean, if there's an emotion that's evoked, it usually ties into that. But today's show was inspired by the sheer lack of respect and acknowledgement and appreciation that white America, and non-black people have shown black people. So I decided, I said, let me get this right. I want to make sure that the attention is right, and that we get right in the face of white America. So you'll hear a lot of my commentary, black Americans versus white Americans. And really, this is something that I think we all walk on eggshells about. I hear people say, well, you're just so divisive. It shouldn't be white against black. It's the human race. Look, I didn't start this. I'm just reporting or giving my views on what has evolved 400 years, since the 400 years, since it started 400 years ago. So don't get mad at me if I'm responding to the hate that's perpetrated against me. It's you got to understand where this is coming from. So let me just again, paint the picture appropriately. Again, this is not me just saying it for the sake of saying it. So the name or the title of this particular podcast is You Got Damn Right I Feel Entitled. Again, you got damn right I feel entitled. Of course, I have copious notes here. As black people, we've all heard white people or non-black people, and even some sellout black people say, why do black people feel so entitled? Right? We've heard that. Why do black people feel so entitled to things like government assistance? Why don't they just work for it like everybody else? I think Duke has a phrase, Duke basketball schools, like earn everything, which is, anyway, I'm getting off track here. But we've all heard it, and here's my response. Because we built this bitch. I could probably end it there. And what I mean by that is we built this friggin' country, the United States of America. We built it with our blood, sweat, tears, and dead bodies that they still are digging up. I think there was an news article about a prison in Texas, they were building some structure and they found an old prison burial ground. I mean, it was in 2018. This is 2019. They're still finding black bodies. So anyway, blood, sweat, and tears. And I know most people use that term metaphorically, meaning they gave their all. They dug in. But when it comes to black people, it's literally blood, sweat, tears. We died and suffered, still doing it, to build the United States of America, this country. So white folks and other non-black people can survive and thrive, whether you like that or not. People say, well, my parents were immigrants. They immigrated here voluntarily. Well, they didn't have a dime to their name. Well, they had something to get here. Well, they came over here and they worked. Exactly. They came over here. They worked. They got paid. But it was already an infrastructure here, waiting for them. What is that? Bring me your tired, your hungry, your huddled masses, or whatever that is. By the time they saw that sign, America had already been established as an economy. And that ain't no secret. And it damn sure ain't no mystery. No matter how much you want to act like you're deaf, dumb, and blind to those facts, it doesn't make them non-facts. It's irrefutable. We built this country, and you damn right we should get whatever we want, when we want, however we want, whenever we ask for it. No questions. Black people created most of the industries that exist today because of free labor. Think about that. Because of free labor, if your corporation that you've worked at for the last 2, 5, 10, 15, 20 years that has an average of 40 to 50 employees that makes an average of 35, 40,000 a year. If they could keep that money, how rich would that company become? That's just a drop in the bucket example. That's what happened. So the corporations that exist today, and I'm going to go into that, owe their very existence to black people, slaves. One of them, Lehman Brothers, they're no longer in business because of the Great Recession in 2008. They declared bankruptcy. Now get this. I think it had to do with subprime mortgages at the time. At the time, they had $639 billion in assets. $619 billion in assets, pardon me. And this is all verifiable online. You can just Google it. $619 billion in assets, but they had a $639 billion in debt because of the subprime fiasco. And in my opinion, serves them right. And I'm going to tell you why. According to the Sun Times, the financial services firm acknowledged recently that its founding partners owned not one, but several enslaved Africans. Not that one would not still be egregious. Okay, and this was during the Civil War era. And it goes on to say that in all likelihood, it profited significantly from slavery. Of course they did. That was the point of slavery. Okay. Now, Lehman Brothers' public response after these facts became public, and the language that they use, the way it's couched, this is a sad part. I mean, I can hear violin music, right, in the background. This is a sad part of our heritage. We deeply, apologetically, it was a terrible thing. There's no one sitting in the United States in the year 2005, hopefully, who would ever, in a million years, defend the practice, said Joe Polizzato, general counsel. They had an attorney do this, right? It wasn't even the CEO. It wasn't the president. It wasn't the chairman of the, it was an attorney, a lawyer that made this statement. Now, mind you, there's no attempt that was made to compensate the descendants of these slaves or African Americans. There's no punitive damages that were assessed or not, well, there was no attempt, I should say, to determine, okay, what's the value of the harm that we caused? Now, granted, they're out of business and it doesn't matter, but as I go on, Aetna, matter of fact, that's my current insurance company. The United States' largest health insurer apologized for selling policies in the 1850s that reimbursed slave owners for their financial losses when the enslaved Africans they owned died, which was frequent. They made money. So not only did they invest the money in the body of the slave, a few $100s, they made that money back just by the 30 or 40 years of that slave's life existence 100 times or 1,000 times over. Then they made another profit off the death. Now, Aetna has long acknowledged that for several years shortly after its founding in 1853, mind you, the Emancipation Proclamation, 1865, so you can see the window, that the company may have insured the lives of slaves. I love that word, may. Don't you just love that? That's like Hitler saying, I may have killed a few Jews. Maybe. And we just take it. And Aetna's spokesman, Fred LeBurge, in 2002, here's his statement. We express our deep regret over any participation at all in this deplorable practice. And that's a quote. But there's no attempt at compensation for the abuse the slaves suffered. So how regretful are you? How remorseful are you really? If I enslaved your mama, if I didn't pay your own mama for a 40-hour work week, I think Mr. LeBurge would hire an attorney so fast my head would spin. J.P. Morgan Chase, who I have an account with, recently admitted their company's link to slavery. This is good. Okay, this is a good one. Today we're reporting, this is their statement, that this research found that between 1831 and 1865, that's what, 34 years, right? Two of our predecessor banks, Citizens Bank and Canal Bank in Louisiana, accepted approximately 13,000 enslaved individuals as collateral on loans and took ownership of approximately 1,250 of them. That's about, 10% roughly? They took ownership of the 1,250 when the plantation owners defaulted on the loans, which happens. It's crazy. New York Life Insurance Company. I drive by this place every day when I'm going to work. They're the largest mutual life insurance company in the United States. Okay? They also took part in slavery by selling insurance policies on enslaved Africans. So we've covered insurance, we've covered banking, life insurance, banking, health insurance, right? We've covered thus far Lehman Brothers, financial investing. So when I say we created this bitch, this industry, the infrastructure that exists, connect the dots. It's not hard to see. Stevie Wonder could see this. Let me continue. According to the USA Today, evidence of 10 more New York Life slave policies comes from an 1847 account book. 1847. Well, just under 20 years, right, before the emancipation. But anyway, it was kept by the company's Natchez, Mississippi agent. His name was W.A. Britton. I think it was a he, but W.A. Britton. The book part of this collection is or was at the Louisiana State University, and it contains Britton's notes on slave policies, slave insurance policies. He wrote that there were amounts ranging from $375 to $600 for these slaves, each slave. And a 1906 history of New York Life says that 339 of the company's first 1,000 policies, that's a third, just over a third, were written on the lives of slaves. USA Today also reported that Wachovia Corporation, now owned by Wells Fargo, has apologized for its ties to slavery. This apology thing, this is a pattern. Oh, just say you're sorry and move on. Those black people, they'll take an apology. Just tell them you're sorry and give them a free toaster when they open up their account. Right? They disclosed that 2 of their historical predecessors owned enslaved Africans and accepted them as payment. You ain't got the money? Give me Kunta. What? On behalf of Wachovia Corporation, and this is their fake ass apology, I apologize to all Americans and especially to African Americans and people of African descent. It's like they go to the same attorney. They just take the statement the last person read and then they add a little nuance. But anyway, this is from Ken Thompson. This is the Wachovia chairman and chief executive officer. Okay, and the statement released late Wednesday, when it was released, we're deeply saddened by these findings. What is deeply saddened by these findings? Like this is some scientific lab experiment that didn't yield the results that they had expected or anticipated. We're saddened by these findings. No compensation for the abuse they find so abhorrent. Apology not accepted. F you, pay me. For the record, apology not accepted. Yeah, I'm speaking for every black person in America. No, we don't accept your apology. F you, pay me. And for those that don't want the money, send it to me. You know, I hate those kind of black people. I do. Well, I think it's terrible. Paying reparation or I don't think we should. I didn't. Sambo. All right. N.M. Rothschild and Sons Bank in London was linked to slavery. This company was one of the biggest names in the city of London. So now we're talking British Empire. They had previously undisclosed links to slavery in the British colonies. Documents seen by the Financial Times have revealed that Nathan Mayer Rothschild, the banking family, the 19th century patriarch, made his first personal gains by using enslaved Africans as collateral. He made his first personal gains. It means his first dime, penny, nickel, quarter, dollar, whatever it was, by using enslaved Africans as collateral in dealings with slave owners. Norfolk Southern, this is the train line, has a history in the slave trade. The Mobile and Girard Company, which is now part of Norfolk Southern, I know we've all seen those, offered slaveholders $180 a piece for enslaved Africans. In today's dollars, it's about $3,400. Probably a little more now because this article is about 3-4 years old. And they would rent these enslaved Africans to the railroad for 1 year, according to the records. And the Central of Georgia, which is another company, Central of Georgia, they aligned themselves with Norfolk Southern Line to this day. And they valued its slaves at $31,000, but in today's standards, it's about $663,000. That's insane. So you can assess a value. So this is the ironic part. So you can sell me and know how much I cost or the slave costs, but somehow you can't quantify it 100 years later as to how much the descendants of these black slaves should be compensated, i.e. reparations. And there's still no talk of compensation for the abuse. USA Today, they found that their own parent company, E.W. Scripps in Gannett, had links to the slave trade. This is USA Today. So we help with the newspapers, railways. And according to reports, Fleet Boston evolved from an earlier financial institution, Providence Bank, founded by John Brown. We've heard of that, John Brown. He was a slave trader and owned ships used to transport enslaved Africans. Now, John Brown did have a change of heart, in all fairness. Not that it takes away from what he did. He ultimately fought against slavery, and he led a few slave rebellions, of which the final one cost him his life. I think he was attacking an armory of some sort. And so, it didn't work out. So, yeah. The bank financed Brown's slave voyages and profited from them. Brown even reportedly helped charter what is now known as Brown University. As I take a sip. CSX, that trail or railway, right? Rail line, used slave labor to construct portions of some of the United States rail lines under the political and legal system that was in place more than a century ago. And I know we've all seen CSX. We've seen that. We've seen Norfolk Southern. Two enslaved Africans who the company rented were identified as John Henry and Reuben. This man didn't even have a last name. Just the humiliation. Reuben. Now, the record states that they were returned clothed when they arrived to work for the company. They were returned clothed when they arrived to work. Now, individual enslaved Africans cost up to $200. That's the equivalent of $3,800 today to rent for an entire season. Think about that. 3-4 months, $200. And you work sun up to sundown, 6 days a week. And CSX took full advantage. Terrible. Do you think CSX is offering any kind of compensation? No, they're not. All right, as we continue, the Canadian National Railway Company. Canada. It's a Canadian class railway headquartered in Montreal, Quebec. So Canada was dipping into the American slave trade. And it went from Canada to the Midwestern and Southern United States, which makes sense, right? Slavery's in the South, where it's dominant. Midwest, okay. The company also has a history in which it benefited from slavery, obviously. The Mobile and Ohio. The Mobile and Ohio, now part of Canadian National, valued their slaves lost to the war and emancipation, get this, at $200,000 each. Well, it says $200,000 as a group. I don't know how many, but the amount in today's number is $2.2 million. Now that's it cuts in a lot of ways. One is we shouldn't have never been there in the first place in that way, but you've assessed a value and now somehow you have to be compensated potentially for your loss. This next one is really interesting. Brown Brothers Harriman. This is the oldest and largest private investment bank and securities firm in the United States, founded in 1818. That's 200 years ago, right? 100 years ago. Well, no, 200. My bad. 1980, 200. Yeah, 200 years ago. So USA Today found that New York merchant bank James and William Brown, currently known as Brown Brothers Harriman, owned hundreds of enslaved Africans and financed the cotton economy by lending millions of dollars to Southern planters, merchants, and cotton brokers. Brooks Brothers Suits. Think about that. Brooks Brothers, the high-end suit retailer, got their start selling slave clothing to various slave traders back in the 1800s. Slave clothing? What is that? These motherfuckers sold slave clothing. Oh, God. And no talk of compensation. And you know, the last two companies that I read, nobody ever came public with a public apology. Not that it was going to ever be good enough, but they just said, F it. No, we know we did it. We're proud of it. And guess what? You're not getting an apology. Barclays, right? I think, what is it? The Barclays Center in New York, the British multinational bank and financial services company headquartered in London, UK, British Empire, has now conceded, how could they not, that companies it bought over the years may, love that word, may have been involved in the slave trade. Of course they were. USA Today, I'm moving on to another company, and again, Barclays, no apology, nothing at all. USA Today reported that New York-based AIG, the insurance company, they completed the purchase of American General Financial Group. And you may remember AIG from the 2008 bailout. Now, mind you, they borrowed from the American government $204 billion. $200 billion. Because I think the total was $980 billion for the entire bailout, you know, for the auto industry, the insurance, and the banks, right? So they can be saved, right? You can compensate to keep them going, but slaves and descendants of slaves, oh, no, can't do that. They were quick to have their hand out. So anyway, General Financial Group, a Houston-based insurer that owns U.S. Life Insurance Company, a U.S. life policy company, they had policies on enslaved Africans living in Kentucky. And this was this was originally printed in 1935. Now, it goes on to say that AIG said it has found documentation indicating that the U.S. life insurance company that it owned enslaved Africans. So, again, we built this bitch. This country, financially and otherwise, and I'll dare say the world, because we were trafficked, human trafficking, right? All over the world. So again, you damn right I feel entitled. Because no white blood was spilled. No, their lives weren't used to build it. Black slaves, African slaves did it. And it's black slave descendants that should be benefiting from it, not non-black people and their descendants. So, black people, stop feeling bad about getting whatever you can from the government. I don't care what the program is, get it. Or a corporate system. It's yours, rightfully. You're entitled to it. Your ancestors suffered, bled, and died so that you can have it. It's yours. So, in closing, if a non-black person or white person makes any comment that is designed to make you feel bad about feeling entitled, because we know that they're very good at that. They can't understand how slavery happened. They can't connect the dots on discrimination and redlining, police brutality. They can't connect the dots on that, but they're so highly intellectual about trying to make you feel bad about feeling entitled. You tell them you got damn right I feel entitled. My ancestors built this bitch. Give me what I earned, what you owe me, and you can start with reparations. All right, so I got a short Q&A. A1. Should today's non-black or white citizenry feel obligated to right the wrongs of their forefathers and ancestors? Duh, hell yes. This information is readily available and verifiable. And I hate the fact that we even have to even qualify that. 400 years, look, you could trip on this walking down the street. There's so much information. It's there. The only reason why they would not or don't want to correct it, it's because they're living comfortable off our black bodies, plain and simple. And you guys, non-black people listening, you can wrestle with that all you want. You can justify it. It wasn't me. I wasn't there. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. It wasn't me. Didn't have to be you. It was people that looked like you that created it so that you could benefit. Stop saying that. Well, that's all I got. Ain't no need to drag this out. White people, you got to get it together. Non-black people, you got to understand, you walked into something that was already built. You didn't build anything. And don't miss me with my dad was Irish, or my parents were immigrants from Germany, or they were immigrants from Poland. Miss me with that. They weren't brought here in a slave ship. Hundreds packed 18 inches apart from each other. Throwing up on each other. Urinating on each other. Defecating on each other. Dying next to each other. So miss me with that. They chose to. They bought a ticket. And remember, all I'm doing is responding to what was done to us as black people. And continue to happen for over 400 years. So, you damn right I feel entitled. F you pay me. So, I want to thank you for checking out another podcast of We Ain't Scared Talk. Definitely subscribe. Please subscribe. You got some good food for thought. My name is A1, and we ain't scared.